Hello, greetings. Welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about how it's those little things that are going to be the things that end up saving us. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Wellness Simplified podcast. Simple wellness tips to help you improve your life without turning it upside down. With your host, award-winning fitness instructor, nutrition coach, and wellness expert, Susie Fevens.
Welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. You know the drill. If you aren't already subscribed, I would love it if you would subscribe in whatever podcast player you are listening to, and that way new episodes are delivered right to your device. And if you'd like to hang out with me more, you can head over to welluniversity.ca. That is my online hub for all of my classes and programs and whatnot. Today we're talking about how it's the little things that are going to save you. And this is something that I have been telling my low impact class folks for years. I am like a broken record, but every single class, Tuesdays and Thursdays, we go through this series of exercises. It differs a little bit time to time. I have a large pool that I draw from, but they're all these little exercises that are not anything you're ever going to find in your standard workout program, but they are the little exercises that are going to save us. So for example, we do exercises that help us shifting our weight so that we can maintain that muscle memory. So when something happens and we have to get out of the way quickly, we do it automatically and we don't fall over. We do ones that strengthen our ankles so that we are less prone to rolling our ankles. We do a lot of range of motion work to make sure that we can move our joints in all of the directions that they're supposed to move. Think about your daily movement with your legs, especially. You're moving forward, maybe a little bit backwards, very occasionally side to side, unless you're in something like a fitness class. But your hips are supposed to go, like your femur is supposed to be able to do a nice little circle inside that hip joint, but we just go front and back, and we start to lose that ability. And it's really important that we maintain good range of motion through our joints, through our radial ulna joint, the joint in our forearm that allows us to go from having our palm facing up to our palm facing down. You don't think about it, but your leg can't do that. You can't turn your foot all the way upside down, right? There's so many parts of our bodies that it's critical for regular daily movement that we're able to use them, but very few of them are practiced in a regular exercise class. And I tell them, I know these are not exciting. That's usually when I save my story or my chat time, is for when we're doing these things so that we can have a bit of a distraction at the same time. But they are so, so, so important. And ironically, a week ago in class, I was telling them this, how it's so important that we are able to do these things, because if something happens, and there is a huge list of the things that can happen to any one of us at any time, it is those little things that we have been doing to maintain that range of motion, to strengthen these different small muscles that are going to save us. And then on the weekend, I dislocated my sacrum. I mean, we're talking about micromillimeters, is not a big dislocation, but you only have to have a bone move out of joint so little for it to become excruciating. And it was some of those, not specifically exercises we do in those low impact classes, but exercises I teach in my yoga classes. It was those movements, those teeny tiny, boring, this isn't very exciting movements that helped me get it back in place. That makes it sound much more eventful than it really was. But sometimes, like, it's not always as eventful as like a dislocated shoulder. Sometimes it's just a little tweak that helps put something back in place. But it's those little movements, those big classic movements that we think about are important. Of course they're important. Squats are important. Lunges are important. Bicep curls, tricep presses, all that stuff is important. But those are the things that you get in everyday workouts and classes and movement. Things that you don't do in everyday life are things like those ankle stability, like shifting the weight, like learning how to do pelvic stabilization exercises, because that's what saved me, was pelvic stabilization exercises. Otherwise, I was going to end up in the ER or who knows where, because I could not walk because there was so much pain. It's those little things. And even though I'm speaking about exercises here, this goes for basically all types of wellness. It's those little habits that we do day in and day out that are boring and dull and don't feel like they are amounting to anything, that are amounting to something. Drinking that extra glass of water each day may not feel like it's doing anything. Flossing your teeth, although I would argue flossing your teeth, you can tell that you've done something because your mouth just feels cleaner, right? But as a little thing that has a long-term impact. So many people are focused on those big things. And yes, the big things are important, but they forget about the little things. And the little things are just as, if not more, important than the big ones. I'm going to use a money example because I always find that money illustrates these things very well. But imagine, or maybe you already have this in place, you have one of those bank accounts that has a save the rest or save the difference or whatever it's called program. And so whenever you make a purchase using your debit card, if it was for like $6.69, that amount would come over your bank account, and then your bank automatically takes the difference from $6.69 and $7, rounds it up, and takes that other little chunk of change and puts it in a savings account. Now assume that maybe you use your debit card 5 times a week, which doesn't seem like a whole lot. And let's say on average, it's putting 30 cents in your savings. So 30 times 5 is about $1.50. It's not about $1.50. That's what it is. So $1.50 a week, which isn't much, right? You're probably not going to miss it. But over the course of 52 weeks, it adds up to, what's that, like 20 some dollars. I don't want to do the math, which still isn't a lot. Okay, fine. But if you do that for years, and if that savings goes into like a high yield savings account, it's going to save even more. And over a period of 10, 20, 30 years, you're going to have a nice little chunk of change, maybe in an emergency account that's going to get you out of a sticky situation. Maybe you need to have all your brakes redone, and I don't even know how much that costs, to be frank. But wouldn't it be nice if that little stupid habit you set up years and years and years ago paid for that? Wouldn't that be nice? And sure, it's going to take you another 30 years to collect up that much again. So maybe this isn't the best example, but it's an example of how many, many years down the road, these stupid little tiny things we do now is going to make such a difference. And a lot of them, it doesn't take 30 years for them to be helpful. A lot of them, it's just learning them. Like my back, I learned these pelvic stabilization exercises. I don't do them all the time. I don't even teach them all the time, but I know them. And I knew that that was the area where something wasn't quite right. And so I did them, and they helped. So once you have that knowledge, maybe you don't need to use it all the time, but when you do need to use it, it is there. It's those little tiny things that are going to make the difference. So the next time you're doing something and it's small and you feel like it's stupid and inconsequential, remember that so many times it's those little things that save you. It's those little things that save you. Maybe that extra glass of water is preventing you from having a daily dehydration headache. Maybe it is saving you and you just don't realize it. Maybe doing those ankle stabilization exercises helps strengthen your ankles, so even though you're prone to rolling your ankles, you find that you no longer do. This is my truth because I started teaching these classes about 15 years ago, and prior to that, I rolled my ankles constantly. But I built these exercises into these low impact classes because I knew that they were important. And guess who rarely ever rolls their ankle now? Like, I've probably rolled it twice in 15 years. And previously it was like every couple months I rolled it badly. Little things make a huge difference. Never think that what you're doing is too small. It is not. It is not too small because it's the small things that add up that are going to save you. That's it for today's episode. Listen, it's under 10 minutes. I'm keeping this small. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you next week.